We're going to follow the applications as are posted in the agenda for this evening. You hear each of the applications because there are a number of applications this evening. We'd ask that you limit your presentations to 10 minutes. If you are not speaking to the application, if you could please mute your microphone, that would be helpful. Also, before you speak, if you could introduce yourself for the record and spell your name for the record, at least the first time you introduce yourself. We'll go through the applications. If we close the application, we will deliberate this evening. You are welcome to watch the deliberations, but you are not allowed to speak during the deliberations, so we ask that you mute your microphone during that as well. With that, if you choose not to stay through the deliberations, you can always call Woody in the morning and he can let you know what happened. With that, we'll start with calendar number 4, 2020. The application is Lance Zimmerman on behalf of Marie Gallagher.
Good evening, Lance Zimmerman, LANCEZIMMERMAN. I'm representing Marie Gallagher for a variance at 241 Norotan Avenue. We're proposing a new 2.5-story house that conforms to all the zoning requirements for the lot. The variance is for an undersized lot. It's 8,847 square feet versus 14,520 required. Nothing has changed since the first time you saw this proposal, which I think was 2 years ago now. We've gone through, this will be the third variance for this. They were basically a day or two short on the last one. They had the permit, they went in to pick it up, and he didn't have the information from the contractor, thought because it was sitting there ready to go, he didn't have to come back, and it got kicked out again. The contractor is now ready to go. Sean Shea is the contractor. He's been ready since February. The only thing that changed was in the last variance, we were asked to rework the drainage, and that was all done. It was a new drainage plan was done on 12/3/2019. That was actually put through with the previous permit, and Darren from the DPW had approved it. Everything was approved exactly as it sits right now, ready for permit. The only person who has called me was Sue Madison, who is at 239 Norotan Avenue, basically right next door. And her comment to me is, will this thing get started now? And I said, yes, it will. As soon as it gets approved through the board, we have everybody set and ready to go.
Okay, good. We'll just go around and
No, I have no questions. I know the property well. That was demolition, I think, right?
It has been demoed.
So the issue is whether or not this is a buildable lot, and there had been a house on there that had been demolished. I get it. Not a problem with it.
Jeff? Jeffrey Williams, any questions?
Jeff, you're muted.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
No?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. All right. first of all, I have no questions. Secondly, well, yes, I do. I have one question. Lance, am I looking at your screen? Are you the one with the rocks with the cursor moving around?
Unfortunately, yes, I pushed some button and now I can't. Wait a minute. There we go. Okay.
There you go. Thank you very much. I was losing. Whatever. No, Mike, I apologize. I got it. I'm good. And Lance, thanks very much, man.
Dan, any questions?
No, I'm good. No question.
Barb? Okay. Did I miss anyone from the board who might have questions? Woody,
Oops. Where am I?
you're muted, Woody.
Sorry.
Unmuted.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think we had some stipulations last time, but they might have been satisfied. One was about the drainage being approved by the town engineer.
That
Maybe.
was done.
Yeah, I know. Maybe what you could do, if you're comfortable with this, is just approve it with the same conditions as applicable. That's it.
Well,
That's fine.
okay. Well,
We'll handle that in deliberations, Woody.
Sure.
Lance, just one question. You are making the existing garage, which is non-conforming, conforming. Is that correct?
The existing garage. Oh, that's being torn down also. Yes.
Right. And that's being moved to a conforming location?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so we've got a reduction in non-conformity on the property?
Yes, completely. Everything on the property will conform to the zoning regulations, height, coverage, setbacks. It all meets the regulations.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Is there anyone from the public? Are you done with your presentation, Mr. Zimmerman?
Yes, I am.
Is there anyone from the public that wishes to be heard on this application? Seeing no one, we'll go ahead and close that application.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is 5/2020, the application of the Bradshaws, the application of James Bradshaw on behalf of Wineke Bradshaw, 20 Dubois Street. If you're here for that application, please step forward.
Yes, I am. Here I am. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
we can. And we can see your screen as well.
Okay, all right. Thank you for initiating the meeting tonight. I appreciate that very much, as we all do. I have a little bit of a presentation. I'm not sure if it's a little redundant. You know most of it. This is an application for variance for an alteration and renovation of an existing structure at 20 Dubois Street. Built in 1938. It's got strong, solid wall framing, typical of that time period. Ceiling timbers, add-on sections that came later are somewhat inadequate. It's got a poured concrete foundation, full basement, no water damage or leakage. Utility mechanics, including water heater, furnace, etc., are in very good working condition. However, they may be updated with some new stuff during the course of construction. The proposed project brings the single structure lot coverage down below 20% to 19.34. Presently, it sits at 21.82. So that was one of the main factors in this, and also to remove that rear section that I think you're aware of, because it was really right up against practically that poor woman in the back of me, her house. She couldn't even open a shade without looking into her room. Privacy to the closest neighbor. A new partial second level on the left section of the structure, as seen from Patricia, is what that's the second story part. But from the foyer over is 1 story. That's cathedral ceiling, 1 story. It's just the roof pitch will change to give a more dramatic look for a kind of a contemporary Tudor type thing, which I'm trying to do. I'm gonna scroll down now, if you can see the plan there, because it looks like such an enormously large home, but it really is not. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go down to, I'm going to try to go down. Are we all set here? All right. This is the original house, okay? I know you have photos of that. Here is, I keep trying to do this, but it doesn't work. Okay, this is the house that I propose overlaid. The red is the existing, and what I propose is overlaid on that. So you get an idea that this is really not a very large home. It is just a redesigned home. It will be a perfect rectangle. The footprint will not be expanded or it will be reduced, obviously. There's really no tangible placement for the structure that I can see, not on this lot. Not without, sacrificing privacy, etc., for the neighboring homes. It does provide ample parking. I think I have some of your notes here, and I thought they were very good. Thank you, Tamara, for doing this. I'm looking right here quickly at, you mentioned number 5 on your staff questions. There is a couple of mature dogwood trees, et cetera, in the front, and you go on to say that, reduce the apparent closeness of the home to the road. Yes, that is a factor. That's a very good point that you're making there. And plantings, one tree will remain, the other one's a little bit into the driveway, but, we will do that. And I was also thinking of hedges, probably 6-foot hedges, plantings. You're going to need something to offset that and give the illusion that the house is further back, and it's also going to give privacy for us and for the neighbors. What else? How much of the existing structure would be preserved? That was on the plan and the demo plan. I can answer that without going into too much detail. The foundation, of course, is staying except for that rear section. The joisting on the first floor is very solid, 2x12. I'm very happy with that, no bouncing. When I open all the exterior, the parameter of the home will stay as much as possible unless I find something that should be replaced. But I'm going to keep as much of it as I can. There's an interior wall that also goes the length down into here, and you can see on the plan, if I can make this mouse work correctly. Go one more, keep going. One more. Go back to that shot. Okay. This is what it will be. This is the section we're removing. You can see that. Okay, and we're going to go one more now. Okay, this is the demo plan, which is serrated. All these walls are coming down. This wall will stay. This wall will stay. The bathroom will most likely stay intact as it is. I'm going to change as little as possible. Go one more now, please. You'll see a Bilco door here in the back. I have since, I'm pondering that. That may go in or it may not. Either way, there will be stairs in the house leading to the basement if I do not use the Bilco. Most likely the stairs that are there now. Let's go back to something. Okay, go one more after that. Go back up. Okay, that's good. So really, you can see I'm adding this. This is an 8-foot wall here. This is a 7-foot here. These are cathedral ceilings in the sense that they go up to the collar ties, as does the great room, or whatever you want to call it, family room there. This is cathedral up to the joisting, up to the collar ties rather up here. And that's about it. We're going to redo, go up to the first shot, please. The first one. Yeah, you can see this is brick, stone, stone. I would say there's going to be some stucco. When you mix stone and brick and these type of things together, you have to be very careful because they can come out not looking very well. And so you have to be careful. I have a lot of experience with this stuff. And, I know that. But when I get done with it, it's going to look like it's been there for a while. This is what I can tell you. Not to go on and on. So if there's any questions or anything, I'll be happy to answer them.
Yeah, this is Chuck DeLuca. You mentioned that the existing coverage was how much?
Oh, okay. Yeah, right. We had the existing home was 21.82%.
Okay, and you're taking it down to what?
We're taking it down to 19.34.
Okay. Gotcha. So that means you're just sort of locking off that back piece?
Yeah, it's we're going to square some of the structure off to be one big rectangle. Bring it down. Bring it down. Right there.
Yeah. And then you're going to have the front door facing Patricia Lane?
Right, the front door will be, go back up to that slide, and there's your front door there.
Okay, because, the existing structure front door faces onto Du Bois. I guess that's why you have a Du Bois address, huh?
Yeah. Well, that's kind of a post office thing, but yeah. The thing was built in 1938, so I can only imagine what else was on the street.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any other board members have any questions?
I do. Hi, it's Barb Hazelton.
Hello.
Are you pouring a new foundation or expanding the existing foundation?
We are not pouring a new foundation. The foundation, the rear section that we are cutting off, there's going to be a small section there, most likely heavyweight block will be put in there because it's a small run, and then it will be filled behind that. You'll end up with a rectangle and that back section taken off. There is in the front. Go more. This is my assistant here. Go more. One more. Keep going. Okay. There, right there. Hold it right there. This section right here will be squared off, and that will be a knee wall. That'll be a 4-foot sub wall, not a full wall, and that will be poured. Yes, I will pour that to square that off.
You had mentioned you've done this before?
Extensively. I was in the Carpenters Union, and one of the last houses I built. I don't know. One of the first ones that I designed and built was in 1986. That was a large home at 57 Teapot Road. You can actually see that house if you type that in, 57 Teapot, Wilton. But I learned from the best of the best. Doing concrete work with guys from O&G Concrete, using snap-tie dogs, miter knives for trim. We didn't have all the things that they have now, or even allowed. We weren't even allowed to drive nails through the plate to form a wall. You had to toenail everything. Honestly, to do this, I didn't even need plans to do this. I could see it. I want you to know one other thing too. What I do is, I have pride in what I do here. Okay? When I'm done, this house will look exactly like that picture that you have on that first render. That's what it will look like. There's no compromising roof pitching or any of this. This house will stand, long after I'm gone. I have pride in what I do, and the houses that I built up in Wilton and Weston and Reading and all that, they show that as well. I worked with a guy up there named Lorenzini at one time. I knew him very well, and he said to me once, he said, you know, I don't do this just for the money. I do it because it's what I am. That's when I questioned him about doing a round roof. It was taking time rather than, you know, making it, rather than framing it. He didn't care.
I just want to get back to the application for a second.
Okay,
So the issue that we have, I suppose, is you've got two front yards, I suppose, right, Woody?
Yes,
I
correct.
guess.
So we've got a front yard on Patricia, a front yard on Du Bois, and now we're going to add volume within the setback on the Patricia Lane side because why? Because the distance between the center line of Patricia Lane to the front of the house is inadequate. Is that basically it?
We're going.
It's not the center line of the road, it's just the front setback.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not moving the front of the house. The front of the house remains.
I understand that. Do you have any neighbor objection to this at all? Have you talked to the neighbors?
Oh yeah, I spoke to Matt and Katie that were right next door. We have our side yard. That's Matt Truck and Katie. Spoke to the guy across the street. Spoke to the other guy on Patricia and Du Bois, which is directly across from the house. Who has, by the way, the same amount of distance from the road as his house, and he has amazing planters that shield that house, and it really, really does the job for him. You can't even, it's complete privacy for him. And the distance from his home to Patricia is exactly the same. But so that's a good point. That shows you the power of plantings and landscape. But no, the neighbors are all in favor. Everyone I've talked to, and I.
Okay. Mr. Bradshaw, let me interrupt you for a second. Woody, did you have some questions?
Well, I do about the ceiling structure.
Get on mute, Woody.
Oh, sorry, damn it.
What?
Yeah, the ceiling, the existing first floor ceiling. I think I heard Mr. Bradshaw say it's inadequate. Does that mean it's going to be removed and replaced? We know the foundation is staying, most of the first floor walls.
Yeah, you mean the ceiling joists in the first floor, Woody?
Correct.
Yeah, the ceiling joists in the first floor are, of course, to the attic, and they are not sufficient whatsoever for a second floor. No, they're going to have to be 2x12s, and right now, it's a hash mash. Some of it's 2x8, some of it's 2x6 up there. It's it's an old structure. So that part's going to have to be shored up and framed appropriately, of course. That'll be a 7-foot wall on the addition, and the downstairs will remain 8 feet. It has plaster walls right now, which I love, but those are going to be pretty much taken apart for sheetrock.
Okay.
I have one last question, and this is Chuck DeLuca again. How many square feet is the new house going to be, and how many square feet is the house as it currently exists?
Well, that's a good question, and I frankly, I know those numbers. This house will be somewhere around 2,700 square feet, and right now it's about, I don't know, it's close to about 1,800 square feet. So we're adding to it. I should have that in mind. I don't.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Woody, anything further?
Mike?
Nope.
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good, thank you. I'm a little bit concerned about what is remaining after you demo. I heard a couple comments about you may or may not keep the bathroom, you may or may not keep the Philco doors. You're pondering this, you're pondering that. Can we get a little more specific? Because I'm concerned, and I always make this comment for years now that if something goes wrong and you end up taking down that entire structure, you need to stop work, which I'm sure that you're aware of.
Right. Yeah. No.
Okay. Can you just briefly tell me again, and I apologize, what is going to remain? Because my takeaway was not too much.
No. The parameter of this home has good framing. I will keep whatever I can keep. Obviously, you can see from the gables here that I'm going to have to change some of the framing in here. But the stick framing on these things are very solid all around the parameter. The Philco door that you mentioned doesn't exist yet. That was something that I put in on the new plan. There are stairs in the basement inside. So, I will have stairs to the basement from the inside.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions from the board? I can't see everyone, so if you, okay. Anything further from the applicant?
I will say one thing about what we just spoke about, and that is that the first floor joisting in this house, I think I mentioned before, is 2x12, very solid. I have no intention of taking that out of it. And any wall that I can keep, that bathroom, it's basically where I want the bathroom anyway. It can stay. I'm not going to take down things that I don't need to take down just for the joy of, buying new materials and putting them up. Some of this timber is extremely strong, and the house is very strong.
Yeah, so one of the things we might have you stipulate to, we've done this in the past, is that prior to any demolition, you have final submitted plans to Woody, and we understand exactly what portions of the property we're keeping, what portion of the property are being removed. I mean, it's applicants who have come in and said exactly what you're telling us, and then done something completely different. So if you are going to have to do new framing on the first floor in the gable ends, just notate that to Woody, make sure he has a clear understanding what that is. We'll probably also stipulate to the fact that staff will approve an adequate landscaping plan. We are losing one of those big mature trees, so we want to make sure that there's sufficient material put back to keep that street scene looking, as it was. I will also note, Chuck, for the record, we've got two reductions in nonconformities. We have the reduction in the coverage amount, which is fantastic. We also have a portion of that back property looks like it encroaches, or that back piece that's being removed looks like it encroaches beyond the setback. So we're removing that as well. So we have a couple of instances where we're removing nonconformities, and I think that's a great thing. With that, is there anyone from the public that wishes to be heard on this application? Okay. Hearing no one, we'll go ahead and close the application. Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much for everything.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is application or calendar number 6, 2020. John and Bethany Lillquist, 42 Walmsley Road. If you're here for that application, please step forward.
Yep, I'm here.
Mr. Bradshaw, if you could just mute your mic, that would be helpful.
And then, Fred, is there any chance you can make me the, here we go. Yeah, here we go. And, so before we get started, hey, I'm John Lillquist. I live here at 42 Walmsley with my wife, Bethany, and our two young children, Maddie and Phoebe, ages 2 and 4. I'm going to share my screen here because I do have something to go through. All right, want to make sure everyone can see that. Great. So if you asked me 4 years ago if we'd be back here again, I probably would have said no. We did have a prior round of renovations, but life changes, and we're back. So with that, let me get to a quick, reset on advancing. Here we go. Let's do a quick reset as to where our property stands right now. So our home, built in 1946, was born into an irregularly shaped lot. You can see here it's a bit wedge shaped. So this original structure was really already in conflict with the current setback requirements. We're looking at 4.8 feet on the south side in lieu of 10, and a combined side yard setback of, or a combined side yard of 22.8 in lieu of 25. As I mentioned, we did do a previous round of renovations, so you can see we created a rear shed dormer right here, both 6-inch inset on both sides of that, to help alleviate any sort of sense of foreboding, I guess you could say, from either neighbor. We did create a front, pillared entryway right here. We did create a one-car garage back here, as well as did some work to update the patio and the retaining wall. So with all that said, that got us to 19.4% coverage per the most recent survey. So what we're here to do today to talk about is applying for a variance that would certainly impact the south side yard setback, and also the combined side yard setback. But we think with a fairly modest, impact, really, when it comes down to it. So with that, make sure this is going forward. Oh, geez. There we go. So before we get into the overall proposed changes, look, our overall goal here is that we do love the street, the property, and the neighborhood of Walmsley and Miles, et cetera, around here. Our goal is really to try and maximize or optimize, I should say, the available space and make it livable, while staying true to the aesthetic and the scale of homes in the neighborhood that we've really grown to love since then. So with that, let's get into the phases. So we have a 3 total phase plan here. Phase 1 would be the second floor build out, which would basically amount to us completing the second floor space and raising the roof line. That roof line would have a midpoint of 27 feet 5 inches, which is still under that 30 threshold. The second floor build out would mirror the same 6-inch inset that we had on the existing dormer, right, the rear shed dormer. So we'd be carrying that forward right to the front side of the house. So again, it's helping to alleviate any potential concerns around something feeling foreboding. But this would be in conflict with the south side yard setback. Still, 4.8 feet in lieu of that 10. The rationale here for why we're doing this, is that slope ceiling. We're still sitting in a case of that front ceiling or the front roof plane is still will greatly impact that living space in both the master and one of our daughter's bedroom. Secondly, our second daughter's bedroom, the younger one, is down on the first floor, which raises concerns about having her right there. I have to be honest, I lock the doors twice and lock the windows twice before I head to bed each night, so would prefer not to have that as on my mind going forward. So this build out would allow us to create a third bedroom on the second floor. In terms of alternatives we investigated, we did look at that 5.2 foot inset. However, that would still compromise the living space in the master bedroom, and in our opinion, our architect's opinion, would make it a bit less attractive. If you're looking for the front, kind of have more of a lopsided or asymmetrical look. We did also explore a third floor. However, that same setback issue would exist on that south side, and of course, the house is going to seem that much taller. So we landed really on this plan. In terms of what that sort of looks like, in the second floor, you can see moving left to right. I've tried to highlight the space where we'd be gaining through this revision. You can see the third bedroom there on the left. The dotted areas here are the existing dog dormers, so you can see in totality the amount of space we'd be able to gain through this second floor build out. Taking a look from the south, this kind of lined area you see up front represents the 6-inch setback, right? So this entire plane would be set back from the lower plane, right? It's a bit more, obvious here when we look at the west elevation of the front view. or you see the 6-inch squirrel runners, I guess we've been starting to call them, that would again be mirrored based on what we have currently on the back side of the house. So that really wraps up phase 1 of our approach. Phase 2 would be a mudroom / 2-story addition, and this really amounts to a mudroom off the side of the kitchen and an extension to the second floor landing. So while this wouldn't impact the north side side yard setback, it would impact the combined side yard setback at 17.8 in lieu of 25 feet. However, I would note that the total square footage remains within coverage at 20%. The rationale here is there is no existing, exterior mudroom in either inch of the house. I think my wife is tired of seeing my shoes pile up and my kids pile up. And then, the extended upstairs landing would allow for unhindered access to that third bedroom that I just showed you in the previous second floor plan, as well as to create, more run for a code-compliant staircase. Our current one was built when the house was in 1946, and, as you can imagine, that's a fairly narrow tread and high rise. In terms of alternatives, we did look at a front entrance mudroom. However, that side door really gets the majority of the traffic, as you can imagine, coming in from the garage, doing things outside, like bringing groceries in, patios back there. And if we were to only do the front, if we were to do this on the front, that would still remain that issue with the bedroom entry to that third floor on the third bedroom on the second floor, as well as not being able to alleviate that staircase run. So in terms of what that looks like, quick snapshot here on the left, you can see that would be our updated mudroom. From an exterior perspective, you can see these dotted lines here where the current roof line and dormer line sit. So the new structure would be this, right, kind of boxed out in red here, tucked behind the chimney. Just a quick view of the rear now. So that side door would now become a rear door entering through the mudroom there. And then for some real world kind of context, I guess, you can see that proposed positioning right here would be tucked behind the chimney. As you can see here, this is really just a space that we're using as a walkway to our garage. It's fairly underutilized right now, and frankly, I feel kind of wasted. So that seemed like a logical place to try and put, another reason why it seemed like a logical place to put the mudroom. If you just kind of taking a step back, and if you think about how both these planned updates would impact, or where it sits, I guess, against our neighbors, on both the 44 Walmsley roadside and the 40 Walmsley roadside, you've got a garage that separates, that provides a degree of separation between our living space and theirs, right? If you look at where the position of the mudroom and second story addition would be back here behind the chimney, if you were able to see laterally, this actually sits towards the back end of the 44 Walmsley Street side house. And then over on the other side, on 40 Walmsley Road, you can see our house sits already below the plane at which theirs is sitting. And even if we were to increase the height of the roof as planned, we would still not really be necessarily towering above them by any stretch. So just another factor to consider as we think about the roof height. Phase 3, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on. That's really about finishing our basement. So no variance required here, and of course the plan would be to finish 50% of the square footage as per Darien Town guidelines. And then another piece of context around what we've seen in the neighborhood too, right? So we aren't looking to create a third story as we see here on the left, or greatly expand the footprint on the right. There are a number of houses on our street that have been knocked down to the studs and have really tried to fully maximize that space and built up. In some cases, the one on the left feels like it could be a little maybe too tall, but we are looking to stay consistent with the aesthetic of the neighborhood. As you can see from this little diagram on the right, the red area is really what we're talking about in terms of adding to the footprint of the house, which again, given its proximity behind the chimney and where it sits in relation to the driveway, we didn't see as a hindrance. So, with that, I think the key takeaways that we have always had in mind as we've been approaching this project is that, the house was really built into this already compromised, based on today's regulations, that is, on setback. So anything we do really would have to have a variance, right? So in the variance we're applying for now, at least on the south side, would be consistent with what we applied to and then executed before that 6-inch recess. I'm talking about, in our opinion, a fairly minimal change to the footprint of the house that is working within allowable coverage. Again, consistent with the aesthetic of the capes and the colonials that we're seeing in our neighborhood. We're not looking to create the Taj Mahal by any stretch, as you can see by that, the relatively modest addition we're creating. And I think maybe most importantly, the neighbors on both the north and south side that would potentially be most impacted have written their support, or strong support in that regard. So I think when we look at all that together, we're hoping that we can get this variance. We do really love the neighborhood, especially with a lot of the development that's happening around here. I have been for a while commuting into the city by the train. It's very close to the train. We plan to be here for a while. We want to make sure that we can ideally make the most of the living space as possible. So with that, I guess I'll turn it back to you guys in case there's any questions we need to talk through.
Yeah, just a couple of quick questions. The hardship that you have with your lot is the unusual shape of the lot and when it was built versus what the zoning regulations were?
Correct. Yeah. So irregular shaped lot, and maybe more importantly, the fact that it was already born into, a position really that was now in conflict, but was not in conflict at that point. So anything we do on that side of the house is going to be, require a variance in some regard.
Okay. And the second floor of the new addition where the mudroom's going to be, it looks like that's just closet and craft space. Could you do a one-story addition in that location?
Let me go back to it. So the second floor here?
Yeah. Yep.
We could, however, I mean that would limit the access to this third bedroom. And again, given the additional run that we would need on the staircase, we're concerned that would not be enough. And again, we were planning on taking that up and using it as an expanded, crafts and study area for when our kids get a bit older.
Okay. That's all I had. Any other board members have questions?
But yeah, I would say that that our concern was that there would, and our builder's concern was that there wouldn't, that would hinder the entrance to this new bedroom over here that I'm circling.
Chuck?
Jeff Williams is good here.
Chuck, yeah, just briefly, what was the variance exactly that you got in 2015?
It was a variance to create the dormer on the rear side of the house. So we got approved to have that with the 6-inch recess inward.
I see. What do you? I don't have that document in front of me. Were there any stipulations that went with that variance that we should be concerned about?
Sorry, I don't recall if there were any suggested stipulations.
Okay. Just curious.
Yeah, again, I think this time around we're looking at here basically what we did last time on the backside.
There's someplace.
Dan or Barb, any questions?
No.
No questions, Mike.
Okay, I had. Woody, there is a question about the coverage. that correct? Is that this application?
Yeah, initially there was some seemingly shaky math. Something wasn't really adding up. And I think the applicant squared that away with their surveyor. But that might be worth double checking to make sure that we're not anywhere over 20%, for gosh sake.
Yeah, I mean, I actually reviewed back with him just to confirm how we got to that. And, you know, if you see up here on the upper left where I'm circling now, in order to get to 20%, we actually pulled this back about 6 inches to accomplish that. Otherwise, if that wasn't an issue, then we would have gone flush to the back of the house. So he has confirmed that it is 20%.
Could that addition be moved back towards the back of the house?
Meaning slid back along this wall here.
Yeah, because I think that'd get you into a more conforming location.
It could be something we'd investigate. It might. I mean, it's going to leave a bit of a the gap here. And you know, I think ideally, you know, yeah, it's certainly something we can look at, and I can talk with our architect and builder about if that was going to be an issue.
Okay.
I mean, right now it's again flush up with against the chimney, which seemed like a good position, but.
Yep, I got it. All right. Anybody else on the board that needs to be heard? Woody, do you have any other questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. Anything further from the applicant?
No, I think just that, you know, again, we're hoping that it's a fairly modest, as you can see from the overall position within the survey, and between, you know, the space that we're trying to make the most of, this seemed like the best use of that little sliver of land, and ideally we can, you know, replicate what we got from a variance from the previous round with that 6 inches in back and now in front. So.
Yep. Okay.
I think
Good. Anyone from the public that wishes to be heard on this application? Okay. Hearing no one, we'll go ahead and close the application.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on our list is, we skipped over 7, Woody, huh? We went straight to 8. 8/2020, the application of Mark LeBeau on behalf of Shima Amin and Mark Iyer. If I got that right, I hope. If you're here on that application, please take the mic.
Good evening, everybody. Mark Lebo with William Seymour and Associates. I am representing the owner and applicant, Shima Amin and Mark Iyer, who are, I believe, in attendance somewhere here on the screen. I saw Mark's icon there earlier. Also here somewhere is our civil engineer, Doug DeVesta, and our designer, builder, Renato Gasparian. So I'd like to just give you a little background, and then I will review the, see if, can everybody, oh yes, okay, so everybody can see that, I think, yes? Can everybody see the survey map? Yes. Okay. So, great. So what we have here is a lot that was created by subdivision in 1955. At the time, the lot was located in a quadruple A residence zone, and at that time, the lot width and depth requirements were both 150 feet. Under the current R2 zoning, the lot width and depth requirements are both 200 feet. The existing residence was erected in 1957 and has fallen into disrepair. The property is dominated by inland wetland pockets and corridors and their associated upland review areas. The lot is 172 feet wide as its narrowest point, which is at the street line of Shady Acres Road, and over its approximate 440-foot depth, it widens to 225 feet back here at the rear property line. and it's presumed that the existing house was built in its location due to the extensive wetlands. Now, that said, I'd just like to point out here, the lot becomes 200 feet wide at approximately the midpoint of its depth, and meaning that that remaining area that would be compliant with the 200-foot lot width would be primarily dominated by wetlands in the upland review area. So the proposed project consists of raising the existing house and building a replacement dwelling in generally the same location and with the same orientation as the existing home. There'd be a new driveway, septic system, well, and other features associated with the construction of a new residence. The new residence and its appurtenances have been designed to comply with all zoning setback, building height, and building coverage requirements, and we seek only a variance to allow the construction of the replacement dwelling on a portion of the lot having less than the minimum lot width currently required. That said, just so you know, it's where we're proposing it, we're asking for 178 feet in lieu of the required 200 feet. So we're at 89% of the lot width required at the narrowest point, which is at the front of the house. And of course, you can see based on the survey here that the lot lines diverge and get wider, at a rather slow rate, such that the 200 feet isn't reached until about halfway deep on the lot. Now, just to point out a little idiosyncrasy with the zoning regs, if this lot were 178 feet wide for its entire depth, we'd be able to do this as of right due to an exception that was added to the zoning regs, I want to say 2016 maybe. Woody would probably know better, where when you have a lot that's non-conforming its width, yet the entire lot width is at least 75%, then you can do this as of right. So it's a little idiosyncratic that we're asking for this, when if the lot were narrower for its entire depth, we wouldn't be here. So that said, let's just review a couple of a little comparison as outlined in the zoning chart on the survey of what we're doing here. So the current front yard depth is 83 feet. That would be reduced to 64.9 feet, which is still almost 15 feet greater than the minimum 50 feet required. Again, the reason for that is to pull the development away from the wetlands with less disturbance in the upland review area. The side yard leased one is going to be increased from 35.7 feet to 40.7 feet, an increase of 5 feet on the narrowest side. The total of the two side yards would be increased from 81.6 to 87.3 feet, and the minimum rear yard setback would be increased from the existing 298.7 to 321.9, and our existing building coverage would increase from 4.1% to 5.7%, obviously well under the maximum allowed of 20%.
Hey, Mark, quick question. Are any of those a reduction of a nonconformity on the lot?
No, everything's conforming with respect to setbacks.
Okay. Well, the current structure is non-conforming, though, in that it is also built in this area that's not 200 feet wide, right?
Correct. But at the time it was built, it conformed.
Okay. But the current house will be more conforming or less conforming?
You mean with respect to the lot width?
Correct.
Well, by pulling it forward a little bit, the lot does narrow as you slide it forward, but whether we have 89% or 91% of the lot width required, let's see. Let's do a quick. I have that in the zoning chart as well. So the lot width at the existing residence, which will be torn down, is 181.3 feet, and the width at the new residence will be 178 feet. So at the front of the house, it's the lot's roughly 3.3 feet narrower than the front of the existing house. But we are increasing all the side yard setbacks and the rear yard setback. Again, the whole purpose of this is to limit the disturbance to the wetlands.
And would you say it's because of the nature of the lot and the wetlands location and also the location of the septic on this lot that are really driving the house location?
Yeah, well, as noted in the item K, what we're claiming for hardships are the changes to the zoning regulations since the lot was created and the existing home built, the long-standing non-conforming location of the existing home with respect to lot width, and the extensive wetlands and their associated upland review areas. Now, certainly, I think somewhere along the way, it was considered, okay, well, what would happen if we built the house in the back in a conforming portion of the lot? Well, there'd be significantly more disturbance to the upland review area and, in fact, the wetlands themselves. There'd be considerable more tree removal in the back of the lot, which provides significant screening from the home located at number 7 Gracie Lane behind us, who had, at the EPC hearing, had expressed some concern about the tree removal. So this is going to, provide them with a much better natural buffer between, or the buffer ultimately is going to remain what it is now, and to them there would ultimately be no impact, while there would be reduced impact to the neighbors on either side, and due to the increased side yard setbacks, and a very little impact to the streetscape, and because of only sliding the house forward a little bit. So we felt that this was the best choice. With the house in the back, you would have permanent disturbance to the wetlands there by having to place the driveway to serve a house located in the back. Whereas now, with just putting the septic system back there, there would be some temporary disturbance, and that disturbance would be returned to its natural condition after the construction was complete. And also, too, we feel that with the stormwater mitigation, that ultimately we're going to be improving the runoff conditions, because we've had to reduce the site to a meadow condition versus we had pavement and impervious surface that was just free flowing there. So now that's all going to be captured and treated in accordance with the zoning regulations regarding stormwater management.
And EPC has signed off on this plan?
Well, the approval has not been granted, but it was received favorably. They will be deliberating and voting on it at the hearing on, I believe, July 1st. But we've not seen a draft resolution. I can certainly, Doug DeVesta is here, and we can certainly turn the presentation over to him. I was not present at the EPC hearing, and so if you'd like a little bit more input, or perhaps even Woody, in conversations he may have had with Rich Jacobson, may be able to shed some light on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I ask is if they tell you that you have to move the project further forward on the lot, this variance, if it were granted, would be useless.
Well, actually,
Cart before
I
the
don't, I don't know if I should say this, but I've actually cheated a little bit in asking for the 178 feet, because the 178 foot lot width is actually what the lot width would be at the front yard setback. So being that we're proposing the house at just a second here, at 64.9, almost 15 feet back from the front yard setback. But as I noted before, you know, the difference in 15 feet only results in a lot width difference of 3.3 feet, because we're at 181.3 now. We want to go to 178. So if the variance we asked for based on the actual placement of the house as shown on this plan, it would be, let's just say, 179 feet instead of 178. So I figured the best thing to ask for in anticipation of that possibility would be to ask for a lot width variance that was measured at the front yard setback, because of course we're not going to push it forward of that.
Woody, do you have any comment there? I mean, can he, if we grant 178 foot variance, and he's telling us that he could build it at 179, or whatever the number is, I mean, we run into some issues there, because, you know, we're only allowed to grant the minimum adjustment necessary, and if you're telling us that 178 isn't, I think that creates some problems. I don't know, Chuck, do you have any thoughts on that, or Woody, or Dan, or Barb?
I can just add that I don't recall this circumstance with previous lot width applications. Yeah, it's kind of a surprise that the number they asked for is less than what they may really need.
It seems like a rather de minimis amount, though, from 178 to 179. So, I mean, I'm comfortable with that, to coin a phrase, slight variance with respect to the footage. It doesn't bother me.
Well, we're if I might just, it's Mark again. You know, we're not expecting them to ask, you know, to have the house, you know, move forward, and quite honestly, you know, as Chuck mentioned, it is kind of a de minimis thing, and it does, because we've not received the final approval from EPC, you know, and these lots at such a, you know, if the lot widened quicker as we went back on the lot, I would not have done it this way. But this was the safest way to be able to cover what we're asking you, because ultimately moving it forward from where the driveway probably wouldn't work due to the grading and things. So it pretty much has to go where it is. So I'm not expecting the EPC to ask to move the house forward. And it does, and quite honestly, I think even when we're asking for variances of setbacks and such, the numbers that are being provided have to have some degree of fluff built into them to allow for any variation during construction, so that you don't end up with a violation of a setback variance simply due to the fact that the wood wasn't cut square, or something wasn't built plumb, or something like that. So I think it's always safe to build in, you know, a little fluff factor. If you don't, you end up before the board again asking for relief from something that's the result of just practical matters.
Okay, I just wanted to raise the issue. Barbara, Dan, or Jeff, any questions?
No.
Jeff is good here.
I have one question. What's the original size of the house and what is it going to be now, Mark?
As square footage,
Yeah.
living space.
Mm-hmm.
I might have to ask Renato that question. I don't know that I know that, but let me, if this helps at all, Barb, I would say that, you know, our building coverage is increasing by only 1,400 square feet. So, you know, we're going from 4.1% coverage to 5.7%, and I'm not sure necessarily that, you know, total living space is ultimately a factor, but I certainly, if that's a question you need answered, then I think Renato is here to speak to that. Renato, can we hear from you, please? Here he's coming.
It's Renato Gasparian. Can you hear me? Yes. The current one is around 3,000 square feet, 3,200 square feet, with mostly of the basement finished. And the new one is 5,700 square feet, with half the basement finished, which is what is allowed right now.
So the whole point of this project is the house where you want to make a bigger house and you want to move it forward to put it in a more appropriate place on the lot further from the wetlands, yes?
Yes, to move it from the wetlands, move it away from the wetlands so that we can have the house that we want to have.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, Woody, anything further from you?
Perhaps. Perhaps it might be helpful. There's some mitigation factors that I believe EPC is considering. And I guess the question is, what's the likelihood of EPC approving the plan where the house is proposed, given I think there's a piped water course that would become open, which may be favorable. Maybe Mr. DeVesta can answer that. Maybe.
Okay, this is Doug DeVesta, representing the applicant. Mark, can you put up my site plan? Or give me the...
Yes, stand by.
Okay. Currently, there's the lighter green shade here. You're seeing is the wetlands that was flagged by the soil scientist. There is a catch basin here that's piped coming down behind the existing house and then discharges out the southern property line and goes underneath the driveway to the neighbors to the south there. What we're proposing to do is remove this catch basin, remove the piping and the pipes that's there now, and create a open swale, which is part of our mitigation for the site. The swale will now take the water that's coming from the north down to the swale, discharge it out the southern property line, and then continuing down in a southerly direction. This will all be planted up. Matt Pop from Environmental Land Solutions did a planting plan for this area, mitigation for the wetlands area. The commission at the last meeting we had on June 3rd had no problems with the house location. We're not encroaching anymore into the wetlands area or the upland view area. But then currently is now actually we're coming away from the upland view area, so we're pushing the house further away from the upland view area. So the commission were satisfied with that. The hearing was closed at the last meeting, so now we're just waiting for July 1st to get an approval on this.
Okay, thank you. That was very helpful. Woody, any other questions?
No, thank you. No, thank you.
Okay. Anything further from the applicant?
Nothing for me. Renato, if you'd like to offer something up, or if Shima and Mark are here and they would like to offer something up, I guess now's the time to do that.
This is Renato Gasparian again. Just a few items on the design. The idea was to bring it forward so that we could have a yard, small yard space in the back. And in order to do that, we had to go further away from the wetlands. But also because having the house in the back is nearly impossible between the two pockets of wetlands. There isn't that much space left, maybe for half the size of the house, it would be possible. And we also brought the house further away from the neighbors because our intention is to screen. Currently the driveway is actually past the lot line, and we brought it back in and reduced the width of the house to allow for screening along the turnaround by the garage. On the south side, because of the wetlands, all that screening is also going to stay in place. And in the back, I believe some of you may have visited the site. It's a beautiful, wooded space with probably something like 70 trees of different sizes. And the only ones that will be removed are the ones in the septic area, which will be a requirement to install the septic. We didn't put the septic in the front because there is some ledge in the front that's visible, so we couldn't get good perks there, so we had to put the septic in the back. But overall, we ended up with a house that will be better screened from the neighbors. You retain the character of the property with a wooded side in the back. And the size, although it is a bigger house, it's not by any means too large a house in the area. It's much smaller than the house across the street, for example, that was recently built.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Anything else from the applicant?
I guess not.
Okay. Anything from the public? Does anyone want to be heard on this application? Hearing no one, we will go ahead and close the application. Thank you very much for your time. And if you just give me 1 second, I got to close my office door. The cleaning people just showed up.
Still upside down.
Sorry about that. Okay, on to calendar number 9/2020. The application of David J. Palumbo Architecture for 19 Old Stone Road.
Good evening. My name is David Palumbo. I am representing the Phelan family at 19 Old Stone Road. What we are proposing is to put in a small addition onto the front of the house to provide some closet space and a greeting area for the family to greet guests and have an area in the front to hang clothes for guests and some area for additional closet space. The only closet, as you can see, is in the master bedroom on the first floor. For the entire first floor, that's we feel is not there's no place to hang guest clothes, and so we were asking for a variance, which if it was one of 17 houses on Old Stone Road, we wouldn't be having to ask this variance because we're right on the beginning of the end of the circle of the cul-de-sac, and it cuts in maybe 25 to 30 feet of what, if the property line from the adjacent neighbor to the east was followed through, as you can see on one of the surveys of my presentation. And the green grass area there would provide enough of the setback that we wouldn't have to be asking for this variance. So with that consideration, I would like to say that you could also see as by my inspiration that we're not want to conform to the area at the end of this road as opposed to the house that was built on the east end of this road. We're not proposing a second floor or anything, and I think it's a very modest ask for a house this size.
Well, Chuck, look, we've historically allowed variances for porches 8 feet wide. I mean, why can't you make this porch 8 feet versus the 12 feet that you're proposing?
Well, in light of the fact that the cul-de-sac cuts into this property, why not make 10 feet?
Now, what I'm getting at is I understand your argument about the unique shape of the lot, but what I'm getting at is why 12 and not 8?
It wouldn't provide enough egress. It wouldn't provide enough closet space. It'd be keeping the symmetry of what.
In terms of egress, I mean, we've been allowing 8 feet, time and time again. Egress never seemed to be an issue.
I have 3 feet there, closet on either side.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Woody?
Oh, thank you. Nope.
No? Okay. Okay, I think what Mr. DeLuca was getting at is, we sort of as a board have determined that a 5-foot by 8-foot structure in the setback is the minimum adjustment that's necessary. So we're tied to a legal standard here in granting variances. So the first thing we have to determine is if there's a hardship on the property. And your claimed hardship is the unique nature of the lot and its relation to the cul-de-sac. But then we have to say, okay, that's a basis for a hardship, but is this the minimum adjustment necessary? And it's really hard for us as a board when we said, 8 foot by 5 foot is really sufficient for egress, for snow coverage, for things of that nature. To go ahead and grant a variance that's 4 feet wider than that.
Well, the 5 feet would not provide the depth required for a closet and maintain that porch and maintain the look. And also the fact that there's no other closet space on the first floor.
Well, but there is a large buildable area on the back of the property. I mean, if I look at this survey map that was provided, there's a huge buildable envelope behind the property. So maybe you didn't put your thing, on the back of the property or to the side of the property that might be in a more conforming location. Like, I don't know. It's just really tough for us to grant the variance where we've sort of made a determination as to what the minimum adjustment is, and this doesn't conform to that.
Building on the back of the house, I think, would be not in keeping with reading your clients and hanging their coats and having to walk through the house to get to a closet. That doesn't seem, in all the experience I've had, it's kind of, you might as well put it in the sunroom, convert the sunroom.
That's the problem with variances, though, right? We're not looking at whether it's inconvenient or whether architecturally it makes sense. Those aren't the type of considerations we put into a variance application. We look at, okay, is this the minimum adjustment? Is there hardship? And think we would probably all agree that there's a hardship here, but we haven't deliberated. Okay, so we get over that hurdle, and then it's back to that question of the minimum adjustment. And we've got that 8 foot by 5 foot, so maybe you can work in another area of the house to get that extra closet you need, but you're going to get a front stoop.
I tried working with that. I talked to Woody about it. It just seemed, without, making it asymmetrical, I think would be an abrupt design to the nature and the character of the cul-de-sac itself. Trying to keep the symmetry and trying to stay within that 8 by 5 would be somewhat pointless because you wouldn't be left with any closet space. They're very small, enough to hang 6 coats maybe at the most. So I tried, and that was my my challenge was to meet that because I was told that was the parameters. And I just felt, with the hardship of it, the neighbors have the benefit of being able to do that because there are as they're all small houses on that road. And, I felt, for once maybe in light of what you see when you make that turn onto Old Stone Road, a very large house. And, I thought maybe it might consider a small expansion, sort of say. But, sticking with that 8 by 5 feet would not accomplish what my client had asked me to do, is provide clad.
Okay. I've seen the house on the corner of Old Stone Road. Woody, there was no variances granted for that house, so that was built as of right, correct?
Correct. That's correct.
That's what I was told.
Yeah. So, there's, like I said, there's a big allowable building envelope on this lot. I'm sympathetic. I actually used to live on Old Stone Road, and we didn't have a front hall closet either. You walked right into the living room and the dining room. There was no separation. It's kind of the nature of that street, and a lot of the houses are similarly situated. So it's a tough one. But anyone else, Jeff, Dan, Barb, want to be heard?
Jeff is good, thank you.
I'm good. Mike?
I'm good.
Woody, anything further?
Oh, thank you.
No? Okay. Anything further from the applicant? Mr. Palumbo, anything further?
No.
Anyone from the public wish to speak on this application? Okay, I see no one. We'll go ahead and close the application. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, and the last application is 10-2020. Application of Robert Maslin on behalf of the Teschners. Mr. Maslin, we still have deliberations to do after this, so if you could try and keep your presentation brief, that would be appreciated.
As I usually try. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Robert Maslin representing the applicant, Charles L. Tischler, Jr. Charles is here, and David Dumas, the architect, is also here this evening. I've put the relevant materials into a PowerPoint, and if it's okay, I'll just run through the PowerPoint. I've submitted it electronically to the staff, so they have it as a matter of record. Most of what's on the slides is already in the application, but there's a couple of additional things that I put in here prompted mostly by comments from staff and from DEP. So as I usually do, I'll start with what we're requesting, and that is a variance of the base, or rather the minimum floor elevation. The reason for this is to take out an existing fuel tank, which has already been done, out of the garage and put in a changing room and an indoor sauna in its place. And because the main house is already on a flood variance for the entire first floor of the house, and the garage already has a roof and a ceiling structure that would make it extremely difficult. I guess you'd call it an unusual hardship given the change in the regulations to flood mapping over the years. That's the variance we're asking for. To kind of give you the layout, this property is 5 Tokenie Trail. The upper part of Pound Gut, you can see, runs along kind of the right side of this aerial. Wolf Farm Road is upstream, and you see Searles Road here down in the lower corner, and then Cross Road is off the photograph to the downstream side. The existing property survey is up. The work that we're talking about is in this clouded area that I've called out. It's inside the existing garage right in here. And if you look carefully at, if I can, I'm going to try to blow this up a little bit so you can see there are a couple of different floor elevations already on the survey, and they vary by a very, very little amount. There it goes. But over here, there's a sill, and that reads out as elevation, I think it's 10.8 or 10.9. There's another sill elevation at 11, and it's just basic minor, an inch or two variations throughout the house. And given what we're doing here, and that is specifically matching the floor elevation with the existing floor, we've asked for a variance of plus or minus 10.8. We're probably going to be up around 10.9 from what I can tell. Existing photographs, this is the front of the existing garage. The area we're talking about is behind the closed door. There's a little connecting piece to the main house over here where my pointer is pointing, and this is going to be off that. Next photograph is the rear, and where this window is in the middle, that's going to be taken out and replaced with French doors, and there'll be 2 or 3 steps outside going up to that door, and that's going to lead directly into the changing room and sauna area.
Bob Maslin, can I interrupt, please?
Sure.
It's Jeff Williams. Can you please use your cursor to point to exactly what you're talking about and where the French doors are going to go? Can you do that? Your cursor's not moving. I don't see it. There you go. I can see it now. Thank you. I got it. Yep. Thank you.
I didn't do anything different. Maybe we're all getting used to this. Maybe when we're done, we can keep doing it this way. It seems to work pretty well. This window here is coming out, and that's where the French doors are going.
Thank you. Yep, got it. Thank you very much.
All right. This is out of the application. What I did was take the floor plan and blow it up. The area we're talking about here is right here. And this is the interior portion of it. Sauna is right here. It's 4 feet by 6 feet. The changing room is right behind it. Jeff, can you see the pointer here?
Yes, I can. Yep.
All right, and then there's a door leading to the house, and this is the floor plan of the rest of the existing house. A couple of steps down into the backyard here. If you're wondering what's going to happen with parking, we have an application pending for in fact, I'll go back to the survey, a detached garage that's going to be connected with a just a roof structure. Here, you have this clouded area where the garage is, and then this darker grayed area is a roof structure here with a garage behind it, and that is the subject of a pending Planning and Zoning Commission application because we're in a flood zone. So wanted to point that out in case you had questions about what other work was done or where we're going to pick up that parking space exchanging here. So this is the floor plan.
Just a quick question. Sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
Is that structure being built at a conforming height?
It's unfinished, so that it doesn't have a flood height requirement, but it's going to comply with all the other flood requirements as far as structure.
Okay, thank you.
All right, the next slide is from the application, and starting from the right-hand side, you'll see where the French doors are, and this is where that one window is that was in the photograph I showed before. And then in the middle, it's a section just shows the changing room. The height of this is 8 1/4, 8.25 feet from floor to ceiling. And then there's a kind of an enlarged schematic. It's not completely to scale because there's a break in the sidewalls here, but this is basically the layout. And you can see on here a couple of steps, a landing, a couple of steps out to the yard. And also, I might as well point out while I'm here, the height of this cuts into the edge of the roof structure here. So these, I believe, are the floor joists, are the joists for the roof structure, and we can't go up. One of the questions was, can you go up higher? With an 8.25 foot floor to ceiling height, if you try to raise the floor another 3 feet, as the regulations would require, you'd be kind of bending over and banging your head. And again, this is just a close-up of the back of the garage elevation. Now, I picked these up today. This is what we're planning on, and I wanted to show you this. It's from the Finleo, sauna company. This is a company that's going to make the sauna. They come in kits, but I wanted to point out two things. One is, you see the floor to this is, like a typical sauna floor. It's not solid. So in the event that flood waters come in, there's a one of these types of floors, so water will be able to flow. There's going to be a vent in it. But the other important thing is this heating element is elevated off the floor, so it's not going to be sitting on the floor in the flood elevation. And the other thing I would mention is power coming to this is coming from the ceiling. So the electric, the control panel, and the heating element are all going to be either at or above the base flood elevation, the best we can calculate here. And if you have the PowerPoint, this is actually a link to the website, so you can go on it and either click it or hit Control click, and it'll take you right to the Finleo website if you wanted more information. Now, I put in the historic flood mapping here just to kind of run through what happened here. Now, I have to move this panel here because the notes are blocked. But I have up here the flood insurance rate map, the firm from 1982. We're on the prior datum here, but the flood elevation is 12. And if you converted it to the current 1988 elevation, you'd get to 10.9, which is, I'd say, within an eighth, as carpenters would say, but depending on where you are, the variation of the subversion factor is 1.1 plus or minus feet. So that's where we were in 1982. Then we go to, come on slide, here we go, 2008, and we are pretty much in this area right here. You have floodway here, you have the dotted area is flood zone A, and flood zone X is shown here. The old flood zone B, which is a 5-hit 100-year storm, they don't really show that anymore. But this is also elevation 11, which is under the, I believe this is the 1988 data. And these are riverine, they call them, or river flood elevations. And I'm going to explain to you in a minute here what happened to cause this flood elevation to jump. This is 2013, and again, we're right in here, and we're still in the same general flood area. There are transects B, which is downstream, and C, upstream from the property, right? But this map jumps us up to 13. So this is the overlay on to the town GIS website. You can see we're in here and we're dealing with this 13 feet. But if you look at up here, transect C shows 10.6 feet, and transect B is the same 10.6 feet. And, you know, it got me wondering, why does that show 10.6 when the flood zone is 13? You go to the flood profile, the regulatory elevation is 10.6 at transects B and C, but there's a footnote here. Elevation computed without consideration of wave effects, and there's another footnote, elevation computed without consideration of backwater effects. What happened here was, when they did the 2013 flood mapping, they incorporated for the first time the effect of waves coming ashore, which, if you're familiar with this area, it's quite a distance down to the open waters of the Sound. It's got to go through the lower part of Pound Gut, and then eventually you get to the Sound. What they did was, I guess, calculate what would happen if a wave came in at the same time the river flood elevation was maxed out at 10.6, and you'd get 2.4 feet to get you to 13. And that's where that jump in the flood elevation comes from. Don't know if you knew that before, but I wanted to point that out. The hardship I've laid out in the application, in the item K, it's essentially the change in the flood maps over time. The house was built, I believe, in the 60s, and flood regulations started in the 1980s, and there was a previous variance to maintain the existing floor elevation, which I read as a variance for the entire house, not just the additions that were done in 2005, 2006. And then the more recent jump up to 13. So what we have here at elevation 10.8 is an elevation that would still be a little bit above the riverine flood elevation, so that if you don't have that wave action, it will still be okay. It's only if the wave action combines with the downstream flow that we're going to, and the 100-year storm, which is the way they mapped it. But we have an existing house. We're getting rid of a liquid fuel oil tank, replacing it with an outdoor propane tank, which is cleaner fuel, and we want to use that space in the garage for roughly 160 square feet of changing room and sauna. So that's the application. Yeah, architects here if you have questions. Charles is here if you have questions. And that's all I have so far.
Okay. I mean, my only question is why can't it be raised to meet the flood elevation?
Because if you try to raise it up to 13 or 14, if you raise it to 13, you're going to have to raise the roof. Because, and I'll get back to that slide that shows how this lays
Right, but
out.
Bob, you know that economic hardship or the additional cost of doing the project isn't a basis for a variance.
Well, it's not just economic, it's a waste. It's, it's an existing structure that was allowed when it was first built with a garage. It had a variance for the entire first floor. There was a hardship found there. And this is just converting garage space to additional semi-living space, if you will, because it's a changing room that would be used mostly for the for the pool, which is outdoor. And, the sauna you'd use year-round. But this house was built when the regulations were what they were. Flood zones weren't an issue. Here we are.
Right, so your garage didn't need forming, right?
Sorry?
Your garage didn't, you're building a new garage that's on grade. So, when it's a garage, it's a garage. We don't have to worry about the elevations. But when it's finished space with electricity in it, we have to worry about it.
Well, the garage has electricity in it. It's the, I guess the fact that it's enclosed and you would walk straight out and would be heated, that would, I guess, qualify it as living space, but it's sort of semi-living space. It's not like a kitchen or a living room. It's an area where you change when you're, for in and out of the pool. And a sauna, which, like I said, if you have, if you were to raise the roof, you basically change the whole look of the house, the symmetry would be gone and all that. So it's not just economics, it's practical. There's no practical way to raise it and have a usable ceiling height. Go ahead.
Can I ask a question? Hi, it's Barb Hazelton. Hi, Bob. Did you
Hi.
look at alternative locations to put this new spa?
Well, we didn't look outdoor because we wanted to do it within the existing building. So rather than build a new structure down closer to the pool in a flood zone, the decision was put it inside the existing house so you can, walk directly into it without building another structure outside.
But yeah, you're adding a garage now, though, right?
Yes.
So it's not a coverage issue. You could, when you added the new garage, potentially add the spa there and raise it to the right height.
Well, that's not enough. Different. Well, let me just pull that slide up. Garage is here. The pool is down here.
Mm-hmm.
So, the changing room here, you walk out and you wreck right into the backyard to the pool.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were to, put it in here, you'd have to run 240 out to it, and you'd still have to make a height. Basically, this is detached except for this roof structure. What you do is drive through the driveway, come in, and you pull into the garage in the back. So this could not be an enclosed structure. The other thing is anything in the back would be in the 100-foot cam area, which runs through the middle of the house here. So we're staying out of the cam area, which is here. We're staying out of the area which today you would not be permitted to build in. Where is it? It's right about here. You're talking about a 40-foot setback here. And this corner of the garage is 35.2, I think it is. And this 160-foot area is not up to that setback line. So this location makes sense for cam reasons. We're staying out of the 100-foot cam area, and it's in an existing structure.
Okay.
Economically in terms of using space, it's existing footprint, and we're, not engaging in new activity in the cam area.
Yeah.
Bob, this is Dan.
Yes.
One question: what is the hardship that is faced by your applicant that's causing them to ask for this variance?
We have a garage that was built at a time when you could convert this space to living space, but for the adoption and changes to the flood regulations over the years, they'd still be allowed to do it. So it's an opportunity that was taken away when the flood regulations first came into place, and when the most recent variance for 2 additions was granted in, I think it was 2005, 2006. Variance allowed the floor elevation to be located between the base flood elevation and the additional 1 foot that the Darien regulations require. And we would still be at that elevation relative to the minimum floor elevation. But the 2013 map just takes us right out of that completely. So we're losing this opportunity because of flood regulation, and the most recent map made it even worse. So it's changes in the regulations, changes in the flood mapping that has created the hardship, because it's basically taking away development opportunities.
Bob, did you see the DEP email?
Yes.
You wanted to comment on that, or?
Let me see if I can pull that up.
It's Jeff Williams. Bob, while you're trying to pull that up, I just want to point out that very recently, and Mike, stop me if you'd like, but very recently, Town Council has determined that the change in zoning regulations, and I'm going to assume the change in flood regulations is the same, cannot be your only hardship. It can certainly be one of, but it cannot be your only. So I might have I'm looking for another hardship other than the change in regulations.
I haven't heard that. I've always viewed that as a standard basis for a hardship when you have an existing lot that was created based on development potential and regulations that applied at the time the lot was created. A subsequent change springs from the subsequent change in the regulation, and that's a classic definition of a hardship. So I'd like to see that opinion. If what he says is you can't just rely on a change in regulations, then I disagree with that, because that's not what the case law said. Changes in flood zones, yes, that can be a sole reason. And there's a recent Supreme Court case on that.
Well, obviously, as always, we will have to request a case study on that. But in any event, I'll defer to to Mr. DeLuca and Mr. Netter, who are attorneys and can maybe opine on what I'm trying to say. But that's my understanding. So personally, I'm looking for a different hardship or another hardship.
Okay, we deferring first, or you're looking for a different hardship?
Don't care. I don't care.
Oh. Who wants to
Well,
offer?
I'll go first. I don't know if I'm going to opine on the legal requirements, seeing that we seem to have a conflict on this that is going to be resolved by somebody other than me. But what I'd like to know, Bob, is and I don't know how I missed this, but right now, what's the elevation in the garage right now? Is it 11.2 or 12.2? Well, where are you going to build the sauna?
It's I believe it's 9.5. Let me pull that up.
looking, I'll tell you why. I mean, I'm looking at our 2006 resolution, and it looks like we granted a variance to maintain the existing first floor living space at 12.2 in lieu of the minimum at the time, which was 13. So it looks as if we were giving you or giving your client 12.2 back in 2006, when 13 would have been the minimum required elevation. But then when I look at the email from the person at, I guess, DEP, she's talking about 11.2 elevation of the first floor. So I was just confused as to whether it's 11.2, as she indicates, or 12.2, as we granted back in 2006. You know?
Yes. In 2006, the datum that was used for the flood mapping and for the elevation surveying in this area was the National Geodetic Vertical Datum of 1929. That had been used for many years, and the flood zone mapping and the variance based on elevations based on that datum. That datum is roughly 1.1 foot higher, lower than the North American vertical datum of 1960, which is the new and current datum. So what happened was flood zone elevation themselves, space didn't change. The number changed because the datum changed. So if you see on the 2005 and the 2004 variance, we're talking about 12.2 to 13.
Right.
Well, can you mute? 13 converts to 11.9, roughly. 11.9. And when you take out that foot, it would take you to 10.9, which, takes you down another, 1.1 roughly foot. So that explains the differential between what happened in 2006 and what's happening today. The base riverine flood elevation during the 100-year storm is still 10.6. It's in the same place as it was under the old mapping. All right, so that hasn't changed. What changed is the number because the datum changed. And so when you read the email from DEP, that's, I think, what she tried to explain. She says it's confusing, and yeah, it's confusing because you have to do this conversion, and then you have to take into account that the actual mapping ended up a little more confusing because it's not a round number. It's not exactly 1 foot, and it could be 1.1 plus or minus. There's a whole conversion table, and it gets technical. But that's what happened. So we're really still at the same floor elevation as we were in 2006. It's just that the datum changed. I think that the upshot of the DEP memo was that nobody should get a flood variance. And the fact that there's a variance to maintain an existing house at an elevation that is actually still above the base flood elevation. I really don't know what her point is, because under the FEMA standards, but for the fact that they added this extra elevation because of wave action and backwater, we would still be at the same compliance level under FEMA, we wouldn't have the extra foot, would still be in between. So, I guess the hardship is we have a house, we have a garage, we're looking to do something that we could have done under the original FEMA regulations before the 1 foot was added. And that opportunity is taken away because of changes in flood elevations and FEMA mapping, in addition to the Darien regulations. And this is a minimum adjustment because we're not doing anything outside. We're doing it in a footprint. We're not changing, having any impact on flood elevation, drainage, because we're doing it inside the structure. And the structure itself is fine with, the venting, the other structural FEMA requirements.
Well, I've got to say, very technical stuff, Bob. I mean, looking at this 2006 resolution, without context that you're providing, it would be extremely difficult to understand what we gave the applicant back in 2006 and how that translates into the situation that we have today. So the DEP person is saying that the current floor elevation is 10.8 feet versus required 14 feet, which is the 13 feet FEMA plus the 1 foot from Darien. So that's what we're talking about. So even though the current floor elevation is 10.8 feet, and even though we granted 12.2 feet back in 2006, that's consistent. I mean, and the difference is explained because the regulations somehow changed to make the elevations different than what it is that we granted back in 2006. Does that make any sense? In other words, your claim probably did what it is we allowed them to do back in 2006, which would have been 12.2. Yeah. Now it's 10.8.
Well, that was a different. I think what you're asking is how come these numbers are different?
Yeah.
And I think the simple way to look at this is the 2006 variance allowed the maintenance of the existing first floor living space at 12.2. Now, that 12.2 translates into roughly, I guess, 11.1 or somewhere in that range. However, that's an existing floor. The house wasn't demolished and rebuilt. The floor stayed exactly where it is. And the reason why we have different elevations on the survey, different floor elevations or sill elevations on the survey, is because of a change in the data. But the floor itself hasn't moved. Likewise, the base flood elevation in I think it was 2000 in the FEMA mapping, until the 2013 mapping came out, I think it was 2010. The base flood elevation didn't change. The datum changed, which caused the numbers to change. But if you were standing in the backyard looking at the elevation of a 100-year storm, that would not have changed. It's the numbering that changed. And that makes it confusing for folks, I guess. I don't know if that answers your question, or I tried to just shut it down to a simple.
If you look at the second paragraph of Diane's, the DEP lady's email, she explains why the numbers are all different. There's basically two different data sets that are used. And some of the data sets are one data set and others are another. She's converted, for purposes of her last paragraph, all of them to the same data set.
Right. Fair enough. I guess my problem is, if somebody were to go into the land records and look at that variance, they would never understand it based upon the current conditions. I mean, it's
Sometimes you need an engineer to help you.
I think what should have probably been in the resolution is which data set they were referring to, and it may be buried in the minutes or the notes somewhere when they referenced 12.2 in the application.
I can almost guarantee you that nobody thought in 2006, in a few years, they would change the data. And that's probably why NGVD is not mentioned in the variance. If you went back and looked at the surveying, usually surveyors indicate on their surveys when they have vertical elevations or spot elevations or flood zones, they reference the datum that they're using, and they'll reference the version of the flood zone mapping or the flood map that they're using. The flood maps in their legends tell you what datum they use. So you can look at this and say, well, how come the numbers are all changed? There's a way to figure it out. And if you know how this stuff works, you can figure it out.
Well, let me ask you a question. Is her statement in the last paragraph accurate?
Pull that up and I'll see which one. The hardship is that the previous variance granted addition. We don't say that. We don't say, therefore, all future additions should be allowed at the same floor elevation. Each case is each thing has to be looked at on a case-by-case basis.
All right, I meant in relation to the numbers.
The flood risk has changed, but she doesn't give an explanation why it changed. I figured that out, and I explained that the 2-foot increase is not because of water coming downstream. That flood elevation is the same. They've done a different analysis and added it in to the mapping, and that explains the 2-foot increase. The previously granted variance met the FEMA minimum elevation requirement. Well, it did. And if you took out the element for wave action and backwater, we would still be at the same elevation and we would still comply with the FEMA minimum. We wouldn't have the extra foot. But we're not asking for an automatic variance. But we filed an application, explained the hardship. We made this the minimum amount necessary. We're trading off something that's not ideal environmentally, converting over to LP gas and removing a liquid tank. We've explained the hardship. A sauna, unlike a kitchen or bathroom, is not likely to be used on a daily basis. Well, I would disagree with that. The sauna could be built on an elevated platform. That would require it to be done outside, which would mean you probably wouldn't use it in the winter. Given the sporadic use of the area, access by 2 to 3 steps would not be unreasonable. It's not sporadic use, and 2 to 3 steps would require you to basically raise the roof and change the symmetry of the house. So there are responses to each of these sentences here.
Just to be clear, Bob, the question I'm
sorry?
asking you, just to be clear, the question I'm asking you is, do you agree with the numbers that she's providing?
Oh.
Or do you disagree with the numbers she's providing?
To have a floor elevation of 11.
As relates to flood elevation.
12 point. 11.2. Let me just go back to the variance for a second. Just give me a second. 12.2. It's actually 11.1. She's wrong there because the variance was 12.2 and it was 13. And when you adjust for the 1.1 foot, it should be 11.1 plus or minus. 2-foot increase to BFE 13. Well, that happened. I explained why that happened. That number's correct. Those are the only 2 numbers I think you're asking about.
That's correct. Okay, so there is, Chuck, I think to add some clarity to your question, when you put these all in the same standard, there is a 3-foot difference, or 3 feet below where we should. Even though the other application said 12.2, it really meant, by converting it to these numbers, 11.2.
Well, it seems to me when we decide this, we got to make sure that we put in the datum that we're relying upon, because I don't know how anybody is going to look at a resolution 4 years down the road and figure it out if the datum changes again.
If this would help, the two datums are some 50 years apart. So I can't imagine them changing the datum anytime soon. They'll probably have multiple revisions to the flood maps before they change the datum again. When you know, if you were going to put in, maybe you just put on elevation issues, you put your datum in as a matter of course. Every company gets a height variance. You reference NAVD 88. In this case, you reference NAVD 88. And you reference it in your minutes as the discussion as the datum that the current mapping is and regulations are based on. But it's a standard datum that surveyors are using and engineers are using now that it's been in place for several years. Nobody's going to question it. I know the staff is going to know which datum. And so it maybe as a matter of course you just put in NAVD, or you make a note that all elevations are based on North American vertical datum. It should be mentioned as a reference in the survey mapping and all of that. It's mentioned on the flood map.
All right. Well, thanks, Bob. It's very interesting.
It's a fair point, but yeah.
No, but thank you for explaining all that to me. Appreciate it.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions from board members? Any questions from you, Mr. Woodside?
No.
You're on mute.
No, thank you. As long as you've carefully looked at the DEP report, I think that's significant. Okay.
Okay, good. Anything further from the applicant?
I'd just say that this is really, it's a vertical variance. It's not too much unlike somebody asking for a variance of a setback for to basically extend a wall that's already in the setback. It's a similar thing, and I would ask you to look at it in that light. I think we've established a hardship here, and this is obviously a minimum adjustment for the reasons I've said. And, I hope you'll grant this. The owner's here if you have questions, and the architect's here if you have any questions of the architect.
No questions. Okay. Anyone from the public that wishes to be heard on this application? I can't see everyone's pictures, so hopefully that's a no. No. Okay.
Hey, Bob, one word if I could.
Somebody talked there. Who's
yeah,
that?
hi, it's Charles Tessner. Maybe just
sure.
one word if I might.
Okay, Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
Okay. Go ahead.
Sorry, I realize it's 10 after 9, so I'll be really quick. I understand that the basic purpose of the regulation is to, prevent the possibility of creating additional economic loss in the case of a flood. And I think there are two scenarios at the moment. If you were, in our mudroom and you walked out of the mudroom into the garage, you'll go down 2 steps, and to the right of you is a 500-gallon oil tank. That's scenario 1, that we can leave that. And scenario 2 is that you'll walk out of the existing mudroom into the garage space, and instead of finding a 500-gallon oil tank, you'll find a 160 feet of new floor space with a sauna on top, and the cost of the sauna is whatever it is, $7,000, and the cost of the floor is effectively de minimis. So the actual increased economics exposure to FEMA or to me as the owner is less than $10,000, and we're getting rid of a 500-gallon oil tank in the process. So I think in terms of economic loss and pursuing environmental goals, I feel it's not I'm hoping it won't be a difficult decision. But thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and close the hearing. Thank you very much. Does anyone need a recess for a second? Or are we all okay to continue into deliberations?
I'd like to go forward.
I'm good.
Mike, because I have 27% left on my iPad.
All righty, then let's go forward. Okay, first application for 2020 Gallagher application. We've approved this twice before. I think that the hardship that they demonstrated was clear. They're actually, they didn't demonstrate a hardship. They showed that they're actually removing nonconformities, and that's a basis for granting a variance without a hardship, is the removal of a nonconformity. So let me just see what my notes were on this. Woody, you wanted to add some stipulations to this, similar to the stipulations that were added to previous approvals.
Yes.
Do you know what those are?
No. We may have them here though.
We're talking about the Roden Avenue now?
Yes. It was the town engineer reviewing the site engineering plan. There was a lot of neighbor. Excuse me. There was a lot of neighbor concern previously about erosion control and flooding and all that. So 2 years ago, that was a condition that may be moot if, in fact, the town engineer has approved the design, which I think they have. So up to you if you want to add that step to be consistent.
I'm fine with adding stipulation. If they've already done it, I think they represented that they had done it. If they haven't done it, have to do it. And get the town engineer to sign off on it. Make everyone happy. So with that stipulation, I will make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Unanimous vote, Woody?
I think so.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, the next application is 5/20/20. This is 20 Dubois Street. Bradshaw application. I think that there were a couple of issues here, Jeff, you pointed out, which I think were well important. I think, though, that the fact that they're reducing the coverage to be within conformity, and that they're also removing a side yard encroachment, I think it's side yard, goes a long way to making this, an approvable application. I think a couple of stipulations I would add to it would be staff approval of planting plan for the front yard. They are removing one of those dogwoods, which, could impact the neighborhood scene and harmony. So I think we want to do that. And then Woody, I think before the issuance of a building permit, you need a full demolition plan, and if he's demoing things that aren't what we were discussing tonight, Like, I think he said he's going to have to do additional framing for those gable ends and some things like that. But if there's additional demolition beyond that, then he's got to come back to us.
Right, right.
Okay, would that have to be done by a structural engineer?
I'm sorry, Jim, you can't comment during this part of it?
Yeah, the public hearing's over. So the question is, should it be a routine structural engineer review of the commitments that were made about preservation? Or is it sufficient to have the applicant just clarify with their construction permit plans?
I think a clarification is sufficient.
I agree.
And the only other thing is, if he is going to add that Bilco door, he's going to need to do it in a conforming location. Because it was not part of this application.
And I agree with that.
Okay. Go ahead.
No, that part of the application confused me. I was questioning because he was pondering, and I wasn't too sure what he was pondering. So he's still pondering whether or not he puts in the Bilco door. So if he ponders the answer is yes, then he needs to put it in a conforming location.
Yep. Okay. With that, I will make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
And I'll second.
Okay.
Ladies first.
Barb second. All in favor?
Right.
That's a unanimous decision.
Okay.
Woody.
Okay.
Okay. Now it's second. Okay. Next is. This is John and Bethany Lillquist at 42 Walmsley Road. This one's tough for me. I understand the hardship. Obviously, there's a hardship on the property because we've granted variances previously. It has to do with the location of the house. And the irregular shape of the lot and the changes to the zoning regulations. So I think we clearly have a hardship here. The question is this the minimum adjustment necessary? And, I struggle with it a little bit. So maybe if someone else has some thoughts on that, they could chime in.
I love it. I see all these people tearing down the homes on Walmsley and erecting these giant new buildings and maximizing every bit of the property. I love that they're keeping the property intact. I think it is a minimum adjustment. I think it's smart what they've done. So I really, really like it.
And you feel it's in keeping with the neighborhood and neighboring properties and, the unique character of the neighborhood?
I really do. I went by the house to look at it. I mean, you've got two small capes on either side, but ultimately they're going to do something similar. But there's so many big new construction projects going up that just dominate those lots. I really think they've been thoughtful about the design of this. You can get them to lop off a few feet here or there, but mostly I think they've done what they can do to bring the house forward without leveling it and starting over. I really liked it.
Okay. Dan, Chuck, Jeff?
No, I think I agree with Barb on this. It didn't seem like that big a deal to me, and we could quibble about hardships and minimum adjustment necessary, but I think all in all, it's a good project, and I think I would probably vote to approve it.
Mike, I also concur with Barbara and Chuck. I think it meets our criteria, and I think I would support it.
Okay, let's go ahead and put it to a vote. Someone want to make a motion? Barb's making a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion. Yep.
Seconding. All in favor? Okay, unanimous,
Aye.
Woody?
Okay, who was the second? I missed that.
Dan.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. The next application is Mark LeBeau's application 8/2020 on Shady Acres. I mean, my only concern on this application is that he asked for something that wasn't shown in the plans. I mean, the actual lot width he asked for is at the front yard setback, and the house he shows in the plans are not at the front yard setback. Slightly disappointing.
Well, we could grant it in accordance with what's shown on the plans. Is that a technical problem for us? I mean, I went out to that property today and I went into the backyard and, you know, I get it. And I don't think you can put the house back any further than what they're planning to do in light of the wetlands. And that's always been a grounds for a variance for us. So I would, I'd vote to approve this, but I just don't want to get hung up on that technicality, Mike. If you think that we should have some type of stipulation to make sure that the house is built in accordance with the plans versus in accordance with the application, then that's fine with me too. But I think we should grant this.
Yeah, I don't have a problem granting it. I think it's one of the issue of people coming before us and asking for things other than what they're actually showing us.
Yeah.
That just seems awkward. Marv, did you have something?
No, not to the technicality, but I liked it. I liked that they were conservative in the adjustments that they made in coming forward on the property, so I liked it. But Chuck makes a good point. What about that technicality? Do we have to deny the application until they resubmit something, or?
No, I think what we'll do, I think we've established that there's a hardship here. The nature of the lot, the unique nature of the lot, the location of the wetlands, the requirements for the septic system, the unique shape of the lot. There's a bunch of things you can add on for the hardship, and I think it is the minimum adjustment necessary if they build it as they showed it on the plans. So I think we should just hold them to not that front yard not building it all the way up to the front yard setback, but rather stepped back as they showed.
And the stipulation for the EPA approval?
Well, they've got to get that. I mean, that's
Right.
on them. So
Okay.
I don't think we need to stick.
But yeah, if I can chime in here real quick, and I know Barb meant to say EPC, I think, but
I'm sorry.
no, don't be sorry. Just reading my notes. Mike, your comment during the presentation was, what happens if we approve this and EPC comes back and they say no? Isn't that what I heard you say?
Yep. Or that they have to move forward to the front yard setback.
So, do we care about that? I mean, I'm okay with it, but I just want to make sure. I just want to make sure that we approve it, and then EPC comes back and says, "Oh, no, what? We don't care."
No, come back and see us again.
Okay.
It's a real issue, but
fine.
I think prove it as they showed it on.
Done.
All right. I'll make a motion.
Yep.
Woody, it'll be a stipulation in there.
You want to make it a stipulation that they have to match the survey location?
Yeah, the survey location. Yes. Within a reasonable. I don't know how close they can get it, but whatever that is.
Okay.
And with that, I will make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Chuck seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Unanimous. Okay, look at us. Okay, Old Stone Road, 9/20/20. My note on this is a tough one. It's really a tough ask. I get what the hardship is, but we've held so many people to this 5-foot by 8-foot front porch, and most of them weren't even allowed to be enclosed. I I don't know, anyone have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I obviously asked some questions about that, but I just think it's, I hate to vary for what it is that we've done again and again and again, because then we end up having really no precedent at all. So I'm comfortable denying this on the grounds that it goes beyond what we would typically grant as a variance for a front porch.
I also, because I love the design that they did, I think it would really make the house very attractive. If there's other places they can put that space, you know, you could put something in the rear, to your point, Mike, you brought that up. So I just don't think there's enough of a reason to grant it.
Okay, so I think we're all in agreement. I'll make a motion to deny the application. Woody, they can always come back with alternate plans, and they can always come back with a different application.
Sure.
I lived on that. You didn't have a front closet. You know, there was nothing. You walked into the living room and the dining room. How most of those houses are. Okay. Do I have a second? Barb is second. Favor? Okay, unanimous, Woody? Okay. Who wants to take a crack at the last in 2020? Charles Titch.
I'm getting feedback from somebody.
Sorry. Bob Maslin's application for 5 Tokenie Trail.
Well, I'll start because I want to know whether or not I'm right. I mean, his only hardship is the change in flooding regulations, as far as I understood. And am I wrong on this? I mean, was pretty clear what John, the town attorney, said relative to the change in zoning regulations, which I assume would be flood regulations as well, cannot be your only hardship. If I'm wrong, please correct me.
No, I think that's what we heard. It can't just be the change. It has to be something unique to the actual law. So changing zoning regulations and a house that was placed in a conforming location originally, okay. Changing zoning regulations in an irregularly shaped lot, okay. You know, it needs to be tied to something that's unique to the law, because the zoning regulations change for everyone in the town, and the flood regulations change for everyone in the town. So we need that unique piece to it. And I didn't hear that. That being said,
I guess that's the part. Go ahead.
That being said, even in my opinion, even if there was a proper hardship here, even if that was the hardship and it was appropriate, I don't see this as a minimum adjustment necessary. It's a want, not a need. I mean, they could easily rearrange that roof design. They could easily come up with other locations, Barb, as you pointed out. This isn't a lot that can't be built on anywhere else. So, and by the way, they're building a garage, right in front of the house. So there are obviously alternate building locations that they could use. They're just choosing not to. And that's not really the basis for a grant of a variance, in my opinion. If someone has a different opinion, I'm absolutely happy to hear it.
No, I'm in full agreement.
Yeah.
I agree as well.
Me too.
Chuck, do you want to add?
No. I mean, Jeff hit the nail on the head. If a change in the regulation is not a hardship, then there's no hardship here.
Yeah, and I think it fails the second stage of the test. Even if there's a Supreme Court case that says that changing the flood regulations is a valid hardship, they still didn't meet the minimum adjustment necessary. There were other alternative locations. They could raise the roof. They could work within a smaller building envelope. I mean, there's a lot that they could do. And it's also interesting to me, Woody, they had already framed out for the French door.
Yes.
In the garage. So did they start doing this work without permission?
Well, I know they're doing renovations in the rest of the house. So perhaps there's been some framing in the garage, too. I did notice the same thing, yes.
shows they've actually framed out
For the door, yes. Yes, for the French door, they framed it.
Is that permissible work?
I don't know. I don't know if that was part of their other construction permit. We'd have to find out.
Doing that, Woody.
No, I don't think so.
All right, I think.
Woody, did you hear me?
Oh, go ahead. No, what was that, Jeff?
Would you look into that framing being permitted work?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. With all of that being said, I will make a motion to deny, unfortunately. I know we try and work with the 10 residents and try and get what we want. I just think this one is part of the stretch. Do I have a second to that?
I'll second.
Dan seconds, all in favor?
Sorry, excuse me.
Unanimous.
Okay.
All right, you had other business, but it's 9:30, and Chuck has limited battery life.
19%.
And I've had a heck of a long day. So if it's okay with you, if there's something simple we need to do, we can do it. But if there's heavy lifting, I think we should push it off to the next meeting.
Okay. We have some,
I agree.
We have some minutes from
Woody, you're
February
on mute.
12 you guys looked at.
Woody,
Yes? Oh, shucks.
you're muted.
Oh, sorry. We do have February 12 minutes, which would be good to approve if we can. I'm sorry, not February 12, May 20. Those were the ones that were the historic homes. The historic homes on Prospect and Middlesex. Rather lengthy.
Yeah, I looked at those. They look good to me.
Okay. All right. You want
They're fine to me.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Okay.
I wasn't involved in that,
No,
so
you're
I'll pass on that.
Yes. Okay, thank you much. We'll pick it up again in July.
All right, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Everyone have fun. Enjoy. Stay safe out there.
Thank you.
Thanks
Bye-bye,
very much,
everybody.
Mike.